You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with former special advisor to Sajid Javid, Salma Shah, and columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards, there they both are. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Eye leads on COVID as ministers push for COVID boosters to be offered to all over 18s in a bid to halt the spread. The Express has the same story, saying COVID booster jabs will save Christmas. The Telegraph leads with violence erupting after a new wave of COVID cases spread at lightning speed in Europe. The Metro has a picture of the Prime Minister maskless on a train as daily COVID cases top 40,000. The Financial Times reports US Pentagon scientists were caught off guard after a Chinese missile was fired. The Guardian leads with the growing concerns of a government backbench rebellion amid a social care revolt. The Daily Mirror has an investigation into fur farms in Finland. And the Daily Star reports forecasters are at war, with some saying we are in for a deep winter freeze, while the Met Office says it'll be warm. And we are joined tonight by Salma Shah and Steve Richards. Good evening to you both. Let's start with the Telegraph and their headline there, rage across Europe as COVID rules trigger riots. And there's been disquiet and disorder in Brussels, in the Netherlands. There have also been violent scenes in Austria, Italy, Croatia, Denmark and Switzerland over the weekend. Salma.
Yes, this is really concerning because obviously we are looking at countries that are in most cases quite similar to our own. And where we are seeing cases rise, we know that the UK case numbers have been quite high for a long time, although we are not seeing the hospitalizations and seriousness associated with the first and second waves. So I think being able to monitor and watch very closely what's happening in Europe is going to be a top priority of the government, but also trying to understand whether there's going to be a different kind of variant that comes up that could potentially put the vaccine at risk. I think all of these things alongside the violence is something that we need to assess and look at, because we do not want to have similar scenes here if we go into more restrictions.
Yes, but Steve, meanwhile, the Health Secretary here is saying that because of the opening up during the summer months, we are not experiencing these conditions and we're going to be sticking to Plan A.
Well, whether it's because of the booster jab, isn't it? The opening up in the summer was quite a reckless thing to do in the way it was done. But the booster jab might be a protective shield. In the UK, we've had more booster jabs than in the countries experiencing the possibility of more constraints have had. And we also had quite a bit of a wave ourselves in the summer and early autumn. But I think what is worrying is there are two things going on, really. There has been the hope here, obviously, and across Europe, that we were going to be through a lot of this. And certainly if you go out and about in London these days, it's as if it's not around. And therefore, when the possibility of constraints return after all this time where this pandemic has hovered over us, some people are going to get angry, as we are seeing in parts of Europe. But the governments there really have no choice. You've got to act when it's spreading again like a fire. And that's clearly what's happening in parts of Europe. And this is the response of people who had hoped they were through the worst of it. And so we're at another fragile moment in this dark saga.
And Salma, when we see scenes like this in Europe and the numbers of COVID patients increasing at such a rapid rate, does it then focus our attention on perhaps how slack we are now with things like mask wearing?
I think it definitely draws attention to that. And, the idea that this is a personal choice, when there is the potential that the government can mandate it for you, I think, people should really consider that, that at some point it's going to stop being a personal choice. But there are other things other than mask wearing, I think, that are helping the government. And I don't think we can discount the fact that the summer opening actually may have helped create a lot more natural immunity amongst our population. And also that there are other things in terms of antiviral treatments that have been procured in what is still a very competitive market globally, because everybody wants to have these treatments, that have also assisted. So I think it's a lot more complicated. I think where people need to make that personal choice about mask wearing, they should. But I think at some point they have to acknowledge that, all of these things can be mandated. And I think the government needs to be clearer about that. And I think they're trying to be, which is why they're trying to push the booster jab and push those people who are over 40 who've just opened into this cohort to go and get that.
But speaking of masks, Steve, the Metro is accusing the Prime Minister of having, well, his own mask slipping, him being photographed on a train not wearing a mask, and they're suggesting that he has contempt for his own advice on face coverings.
Yeah, I think he does. That's the only conclusion you can reach when you see him at a crowded Glasgow conference next to elderly people not wearing one, in a hospital not wearing one, on a train not wearing one. And he clearly doesn't believe in it, or else he would wear them. And it sends out, in my view, a terrible and irresponsible signal. I've just got back a few hours ago from a big match at Tottenham Hotspur in North London. And in the indoor bit, people were crammed in, queuing up for drinks and stuff. I didn't see a single person with a mask amongst the crowd. The stewards all were, but not. And when you have that signal from the top, and he's clearly decided, he can't be bothered, he doesn't believe in it, he's libertarian, it's up to me, I don't think I want to wear one. And it is really irresponsible.
Salma, what do you make of this mixed messaging?
I do think that there needs to be a bit more consistency at the top of government because, as I say, the personal choice thing, it's fine if you feel that you're well informed enough to make that personal choice. But actually, this is going to be a government decision ultimately of when they may need to invoke Plan B, if indeed that does happen. All of this stuff is going to be mandated. So I think a bit of guidance in the form of, pictures from the Prime Minister would actually be quite helpful. But he is going against his own advice in terms of crowded places, and I understand that for some of us, I sometimes forget to put my mask on if I'm in a crowded space, or maybe I don't feel the need to, but I'm not the person that's making the decisions and trying to enforce this and inflict this in some cases on other people. So I do think you need consistency at the top.
Staying with COVID, test and trace is back in the headlines, Steve, and the Guardian pointing to the fact that it's still costing more than £1 million a day. That's been spent on private consultants.
Yeah, well, this has been a running theme and clearly still not resolved. Some companies have done and continue to make a lot of money out of this. And I think one of the themes going forward, it's become one already, of course, is use of money, contracts, who's made money out of this. It's while we're still in it, the pandemic, it's one of the themes. But if we do get out of it, the way these things were arranged will have to be looked at in considerable detail. I'm just looking at the headline now: £1 million a day for consultants, test and trace consultants, not actually the mechanism itself. Well, that's, as I say, been a sort of ongoing thing. I haven't read the full details of what these consultants do precisely, but it does seem extravagant.
Salma, I just got a minute to talk about another story in the Guardian, and this is a warning from Tory MPs to the Prime Minister. Take us into this.
Yes, well, this is about how the cap formula for social care is looking to be changed. I haven't looked at the detail of what the cap is going to look like with this new measurement. But there are lots of Tory MPs that are saying that actually it affects disproportionately poorer pensioners, which means that they will be facing the same cap on social care costs as their richer counterparts. And if that is the case, we've already seen that the Conservative backbench is very capable of rebellion on big issues, especially around sort of expensive second jobs with MPs. So this is definitely looking like a headache for the Prime Minister and Number 10 coming down the track.
Yes, the detailed Department of Health and Social Care caused alarm last week when it revealed it would calculate the £85,000 cap on lifetime care costs in a way that left tens of thousands of England's poorest pensioners paying the same as wealthier people, as you suggested.